Well, good morning. This may be one of the last speeches that I have the privilege of giving as a member of the Kentucky General Assembly. And some people have asked me how it feels to be leaving the state Senate after 18 years. Well, I can tell you, if you've ever watched the Flintstones cartoon and you see how Fred reacts at the end of the day when he gets in his car, he's yabba dabba doo, and he's pretty happy to be getting out of there. It's an honor to be here with you, to have the opportunity to address county officials from across Kentucky. And my perspective is somewhat different than many of you maybe after having served in the General Assembly for nearly 2 decades. But earlier today, when you had the opportunity to see the presentation from Moody's, one of the counties that you didn't have that wasn't reflected on the map was my home county of Pike County. And we all talk about the importance of economic development. Secretary Grimes just mentioned the importance of creating jobs. And whether you're at the state government level or you're at the federal level, and particularly at the local level, there's nothing more important than trying to make sure that we have a sustainable economy in our home communities. As the old saying goes, all politics is local, but the communities where we live obviously are the most important. And in eastern Kentucky and western Kentucky, in many rural counties across Kentucky, economic development is easier said than done. There are a lot of obstacles to overcome. And in my situation, one of the things that led me to run for Pike County Judge Executive is the fact that my home county was probably the most poorly ran county in Kentucky. And the reason I mentioned the map that Moody's had up is Pike County lost its credit rating. Not only did Moody's downgrade Pike County's credit status, but S&P also did. We had bad audits. We had a county treasurer that had failed to deposit more than $2 million in county monies. And it was certainly a poor reflection on the management of my home county, where I am raising my 3 children, where I run a business. And I felt that it was important to try to turn around Pike County government. Fortunately, the fact that the most poorly managed county in Kentucky had a county seat, Pikeville, that was probably the best managed city in Kentucky, and the fact that we had, in what I believe to be America's greatest congressman, Congressman Hal Rogers, who has fought tirelessly for the Appalachian region, they made possible what I'm getting ready to talk to you about. Congressman Rogers has talked about Silicon Holler. Some of you have probably heard him talk about that. And in eastern Kentucky, where we don't have a lot of flat property that's easy to develop for large manufacturing plants, we do have the opportunity to develop alternative energy and high-tech jobs. And as Representative Rocky Atkins mentioned yesterday, Kentucky's leading industry is aerospace. And those are the types of jobs that we can bring to rural Kentucky, but it takes the right investment. Several years ago, the city of Pikeville invested in a comprehensive economic development plan that looked at the needs of the city and the infrastructure and services that they needed to provide to be able to bring new jobs and new industry to Pikeville in Pike County. And because they worked the plan that was developed by leading economic development experts, we are now going to be home to one of the world leaders in making sustainable energy more affordable and more reliable. And that company is EnerBlu. EnerBlu has located its office here in Lexington. They've relocated from California because the business climate in Kentucky is so much better than it is in California. Lower taxes and less regulation. In a moment, I want to ask my good friend, Mr. Dan Elliott. Dan, would you go ahead and make your way up? Dan Elliott is the president and CEO of EnerBlu. Dan has a bachelor's in mechanical engineering and a bachelor's in environmental science from Columbia Southern University, and he is one of the world's leaders in the commercialization of sustainable and renewable energy systems. And we are so pleased that EnerBlu, in working with Pikeville officials, Congressman Rogers, the Bevin administration, And state leaders from the from the Economic Development Cabinet to the legislature has chosen to make Pikeville the home of its new manufacturing facility that will be one of the world's cutting-edge facilities to manufacture high-tech batteries, power storage units, and electric vehicles. Dan has been an advisor to President George W. Bush on renewable energy uses for transportation, and also is the recipient of the United States Department of Energy Innovators Award for his work in developing rapid charging and high C-rate battery systems. Not that I understand what that is. It is my privilege and honor to introduce to you Mr. Dan Elliott.
Thank you, Ray. So before he was elected, his work already began because it was a big part of, Ray was a big part of getting us to Pikeville, and not only as a political leader, but as a good friend, so I appreciate all that you've done. I don't have a PowerPoint today. I just wanted to talk a little bit about the story of what brought us there and the various things that can be done on the county level, the city level, as well as the state level to attract companies such as ours. You know, when we first started looking to where we were going to build this, we were developing the technology in Southern California. And the technology, we spent about 6 years, and I'll kind of talk about what that is, but 6 years and many, many millions of dollars developing the technology to manufacture it in the United States. And that's critical because this technology today is only manufactured in China. And that's a big problem because our power grid is changing. We're moving over to more renewables. We're moving over to distributed energy. We're changing the way that we manage and deal with power and use power. And so with all of our battery systems coming from China, trade war or not, that's a big problem. It's a big problem both from a financial perspective, but more from a national security issue. And so we needed to really think about, from our perspective, where we can build these batteries, but do it in the United States. I've previously built large manufacturing facilities of this type in China. I lived over there for a number of years in both Japan and China building these types of systems. And so we started looking across the United States, where can we build this? And we're building something that is quite large. It's over 1 million square feet. It's very high tech, a lot of robotics, a lot of computer systems and so forth. And of course, it was developed in California, which is where all this sort of technology-centric stuff sort of seems to come from. The problem with that is you can't manufacture in California. You just can't. Cost is prohibitive, taxes are prohibitive, land is too expensive. The environment for manufacturing on this scale just doesn't exist there for us, and I don't think for a lot of people. So we started looking around the country. Where can we build this? And Kentucky was not on the list. We hired an outside firm. We started traveling around. We looked at different states. We looked at Nevada, and we looked at the state of Washington. We looked at South Carolina. Kentucky wasn't on the list. And I met a gentleman at a conference that said, "Oh, you really ought to come out and take a look at Kentucky." I was like, Kentucky? I mean, why would I go to Kentucky? And further, he said, "Oh, you ought to come and take a look at Pikeville." Well, I looked at Pikeville on a map, and it was a little tiny dot, and I thought, why would I go to Pikeville? That was a year ago, or more than a year ago. Today I say, why wouldn't I go to Pikeville? Why wouldn't anybody go to Pikeville or Kentucky? So it's a message of, I was thinking about this. Pikeville wasn't necessarily in the coal business. Pikeville was in the energy business. In my life, I grew up in Los Angeles. Our energy for decades in Los Angeles was provided by coal. I didn't know that. I didn't care, to be honest with you. I never bought coal in my entire life and never looked for it. Didn't know even what it looked like. Didn't really care. What I wanted to know was when I flipped the light switch, the lights came on. When I plugged something into the outlet, it worked. And that's what the general consumer wants to know. So Pikeville, or the Eastern Kentucky region, the Appalachian region, was really the energy capital of the United States for many, many decades, not necessarily the coal capital. And so all we're doing is we're bringing a different type of energy. And I liken it to, I'm carrying around this little computer in my pocket, and I gave my old phone, my old iPhone, to my son. He's 15 years old. And we were driving in the car, and he said to me, "Dad, what apps did you have on your phone when you were a kid?" And I explained to him that the phone was plugged into the wall, and we used to drag the cord, stretch the thing out far enough to the bedroom so we could talk to our girlfriend. He thought for a minute, and he said, "Well, that's stupid. Why would anybody want a phone plugged into a wall?" He'd never seen it. So, times are changing. Things change. When I came out of, I went to school, actually I did go to Columbia Southern for environmental science, but I went to California State University, Long Beach for mechanical engineering. When I graduated, I thought I was going to go into the aerospace industry. The aerospace was huge in Southern California. We had Douglas Corporation, Boeing bottom, but we were building C-17s out there and DC-10s and MD-11s and all kinds of fighter jets and all sorts of things at the time I was in high school. So I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going in. I'm a big airplane guy. So I said, I'm going to go get a mechanical engineering degree and go into the aerospace business. By the time I graduated, there was no aerospace business in California. It was gone. We went from, in about a 10-year period, from over 50,000 people being employed by McDonnell Douglas to less than 4,000 people being employed by McDonnell Douglas. Things changed. And, that's what's happening with technology all across the world. And it's certainly what's happening in the eastern Kentucky region. Things are changing. And when you look at coal was a good thing for decades and decades and decades. It powered everything that we needed. But times have changed, and it's economics. A coal plant today costs about 6 cents a kilowatt hour to run. You can install solar, wind, and battery systems for about 5.5 cents, and it's going down. So it's just changing. It's technology. And the way we use energy is changing. It used to be, historically, that at night they would ground the power because it wasn't being used. So during the day was the peak, and at night you'd try to get rid of it somehow. That's not the case now. It's starting to change. It's changing because we're doing plug-in hybrid electric cars, and we're all charging our cell phones and laptops and all that stuff by the millions at night. Energy has changed. We all have smart TVs, and all this stuff is different, and it's continuing to change. And when people talk about, well, is electrification of transportation really going to happen? Well, I tell you can buy a Chrysler minivan that you can plug in at home now. It's a plug-in hybrid. If you can buy a Chrysler minivan, I don't think there's any more generic bread and butter boring vehicle that you could possibly have, and I drive one. I have kids. But guess what? You plug the thing in, and it charges at night, so you can drive about 40, 45 miles and not have to, start the engine at all. This is how the world is going. So now, when we talk about building this plant in Pikeville, I want to talk just a little bit about that. Pikeville has been the energy capital of the United States. It's now going to lead the world right here out of Pikeville, Kentucky, in energy. We have customers that are signing up for the product coming out of this facility in India, in the Middle East, in Philippines, in China. It's amazing to me that what started a little over a year ago, we were talking about, in terms of our selection of Pikeville, we were talking about building this plant at 1 gigawatt hour. So that means 1 billion watt hours per year. And we thought, well, we have some room to expand out there if we need to. That's changed. In a little over a year, we now have been pushed to 10 gigawatt hours, 10 billion watt hours that this plant is going to produce annually. That's the maximum we can fit out there. And that's because customers have come and signed up. And who are these customers? We have the U.S. military, United States Marine Corps needs these products. We have a company called Ashok Leyland, which is a large truck and bus manufacturer in India. They signed up for more than 20% of the capacity of the manufacturing plant that's going to be produced. AEP, Kentucky Power, invested into the company, and they're now ordering product from us, and we're going to be putting this product across the power grid. In fact, they've identified that they have need for our systems in 16 states. So it's starting to really, come alive. And I'd say this, when you look at why we chose Pikeville, well, the first thing was when we landed at the Pikeville airport, it was springtime and it was absolutely beautiful. Now that doesn't make a business, but it sure caught my attention. So we started looking. And as my good friend Ray said, there's not a flat piece of ground to be had out there. So I thought, well, where the hell are we, are we going to build a 1.5 million square feet manufacturing facility? Because it's not going to fit in a holler. But this gets to preparation. Pikeville spent time preparing. So they drove us up to the top of a hill, and I'm learning a little bit about now mine spoil and cut top mountains and things like that, but they literally have this flat area that's, I don't know, nearly 400 acres. And it's got natural gas, it's got power, it's got rail, it's got road infrastructure, and it has a workforce that we could understand and translate to our business. And that's getting into preparation is more than just, do you have a piece of dirt that you can put this thing on? It has to do with getting the data, doing the work. We were, the first question we had is, who are we going to get to work here? We're talking about 1,000 people. And a lot of these are high-tech jobs, STEM jobs. Well, there was data that they had. The city had partnered with some of the economic development groups out there. And there was data that showed the skill set of the workforce out there, that showed the ability to train, that showed the availability, that showed where they were going to come from. And as we looked at it, we saw a very translatable workforce because they were already familiar with DC power. I didn't know what coal mining was. I thought, from the movie October Sky, you got into the, you had a little pick or something. That's not it. These men and women are highly skilled. They're hardworking. They understand production environments. They understand team work. They understand environmental health and safety issues, certainly. They understand DC power. They use robotics, hydraulics, computers, all of these things that translate into our business. And I was looking at, there's a firm out there that's doing some really good work retraining these workers into CNC machining and things like this. And you found that the Kentucky worker not only did well in the program, but beat all the other workers. All the other states that had sent people to this program, the Eastern Kentucky worker was ahead of the game. And so it really shows not only their skill set, but their dedication to be retrained. These are good folks that want to work. And that's what I want. I want people who want to work, obviously. So, long story short, we decided to build the facility there, but it took a lot of thinking about how do we do this? Because we're going to move in and out, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of tons of product. And Kentucky has access. We have the rail, we have the airports, there's the Ohio River. There's a tremendous amount of assets that are available across the state, but I'd venture to say a lot of people don't know about it. I certainly didn't. I've lived internationally, I've traveled all over the world, and I think I've probably only flown over Kentucky. It's now my home. I live in Lexington. We relocated our entire company. We closed everything and we moved. The business environment is strong here. But it's going to take more than just, do you have the land? You really have to have the data, the information. You have to have a proactive approach. And you have to have good leadership. Strong leaders like Congressman Rogers, Senator Jones, and just all across the board, from state, city, federal, to come together and make it work. And you know, when we look at what's happening out there, we're putting about $400 million of investment into this manufacturing plant. And the backers, some of the financial backers, Citibank and SoftBank and others that are looking at this project or are already involved in this project, these folks are looking at building remote sites, facilities in India, facilities in Qatar, facilities in Malaysia, facilities in the Philippines, and those facilities will be fed by Pikeville. So when I say Pikeville is going to be the energy capital of the world, that's exactly what it's going to be. It's going to lead in technology, and it's going to revitalize the region. And not because, you know, we're coming out there and so everybody will follow, but because the Appalachia region is reinventing itself, because it's becoming prepared. It's doing the hard work. The leadership out there is strong. And that is what companies are looking for. We're looking for places where we can find strong workforce. We're looking for places where we can find leadership that is approachable and available to understand the unique and individual needs of our business. My business is certainly different than another. You look at Brady Industries, another one that's in the news. I don't understand their business at all. They probably don't understand mine. So we have different and unique subsets. Some things are in common. We both need workforce. We both need land. But as you get beyond that, you have to be able to work with the individual leadership, the county judges, the city mayors, the utilities, the infrastructure providers, the economic development folks at the state. You have to be able to work with the legislature. You have to have approachable individuals that can sit down and understand your unique and individual specific requirements for the business. And as you do that, and you do the preparation work, and sometimes it's years ahead of time. I think Pikeville, how long ago did they start, Ray? 15 years ago. 15, that's foresight, 15 years ago. And, you know, I think probably after 10, you might start getting depressed thinking, am I doing the right thing? Is this working? But they were doing the right thing. Not only are we going out there, you know, there's some local companies too. Silverliner we're going to work with. They're already on the hill up there, same plot of land. They're already building out, hiring people. And then there's others coming, other suppliers that are on their way, and not just for us, but probably for Silverliner as well, I'm sure. So that's my message, and I'm happy to answer any questions. I've been traveling around, so I'm a bit jet lagged, but hopefully I'm awake enough. Happy to answer any questions, either now or after, but I just encourage you to look at the uniqueness of your individual counties, the uniqueness of your individual cities, and what you can offer to businesses and how you revitalize your regions. Thank you.